Hey, what's up, everybody? Monday, March 29th. A couple more days left in the month of March. All right, new high in the Dow Jones today. New record high in the Dow Jones. S&P was flat, and NASDAQ was down a little bit. We had bond yields back up over 170 on that 10-year. I happen to think that is a temporary blip up. As I said, or have been saying, the rise in bond yields, couple of things. Number one, speculative. And that was really evident in the latest banking release from the Fed, the one that I talked about. In the week ending March 17th, where in that week you had a 180 billion increase in reserves. And remember all the commentary and all the, the concerns. Banks were going to have to dump treasuries. That's all we kept hearing. Banks are going to have to dump treasuries to be compliant with the SLR. Actually, they were big buyers of treasuries that week. They were big buyers of MBS. They were big buyers of agency securities. There was no sign whatsoever. And by the way, I talked about this in a video. You cannot deleverage by selling one asset for another. I mean, treasuries are risk-free assets. When a bank sells a treasury, what do they get? They get a cash deposit. They get a reserve deposit. It's the same thing. They're the same thing. So that whole, that whole conversation, that whole worry, that whole claim that, hey, they're going to have to deleverage and the only way they could do that would be by selling treasuries, it's just not going to happen. It can happen. What happens when you sell a treasury? You get cash. So the level of assets on the bank balance sheet doesn't change. Just the composition changes. You get a different asset. That's all. So that was all bogus. And we saw with the 180 billion increase in reserves, which, by the way, that was a big increase. That was the biggest increase since last April. So, everybody was like, oh my God, never happened. Where is all the selling coming from? The selling is coming from speculation. It's being driven by the futures market. You have large short open interest in the 10-year Treasury note future by, and I talked about this, by small speculators. That's where it's coming from. So if you want to bet alongside small spec, now all of them, I'm pretty sure all of them have bought into the hyperinflation story. By the way, the boat is now, that boat in the Suez Canal, that's free, that's gone, that went on its way. So whatever supply chain disruptions that thing caused over the next couple of weeks, hopefully over the next week, that'll be alleviated. They got that thing out of there finally. So that's not going to be a problem anymore. And again, I said that bond yields going back to the pre-pandemic levels. What's so bad about that? When they were there last year, before the pandemic, everybody was talking about historic lows in 10-year note yields. Now they're just back up there because the economy is going to start opening up. I know here in New York, they have opened up eligibility even now to teenagers. Like in a week, kids from 16 to 18 years old are going to be able to get the shot. And as of tomorrow, I think the eligibility is for 30-year-olds, something like that. So eligibility has opened up. People are getting vaccinated. I'm going to get my second shot in early April. And by the way, I read today, there was a Reuters article that said the Pfizer and the Moderna, I got the Moderna, one shot is 80% effective in protecting against COVID. I already got the one shot. And I'm going for the second one, I think April 9th. So things are improving. The economy is getting back on track. We are going to get the job report on Friday. They're looking at payroll increase of around 500,000. Remember last time, I think the forecast last time was 180,000 and they did 375,000. So things are coming back. And again, I want to reiterate that growth does not automatically necessarily equate to inflation. As a matter of fact, it never really does. Because you can't have growth when there is lack, or when, let's say, there is a monopolistic force that continues to raise prices. I talked about what inflation is. Inflation is a constant increase and acceleration in prices. And that can only happen when something in the system is broken, all right? That means when you can't produce, when there's a monopolistic force that's controlling prices, or a cartel or something of that nature, when there's corruption, I mean, that sort of stuff. Like people who go back and use the analogy of Weimar Germany or Zimbabwe, it's completely ridiculous. And by the way, Zimbabwe now, if you read about it, I mean, it's pretty stable. And things are getting back on track. They got rid of that guy Mugabe. Well, he died. But I mean, inflation's coming way down. So growth does not equate to inflation. Growth produces abundance. That's the only way it could happen. Growth produces abundance, which mitigates price increases. What we're talking about here is growth. And whatever inflation was in the system, that was as a result of a shut down economy. I mean, you had that is an instance, or in the last year, is an example of how the system was kind of broken. I mean, we shut it down. And the virus made it difficult to fulfill orders and that sort of thing. That was the problem. So no hyperinflation. That's just ridiculous. And so I think, it's normal to see bond yields go back up to pre-pandemic levels. But that doesn't mean, we're going to have runaway, skyrocketing inflation, and let alone hyperinflation. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So things are on track. Big stimulus. Today I sent out the new edition of MMT Trader. Now I talk in there about what I mentioned yesterday in my video, that loans contracted by the most we have seen in 14 years. But you know what that was? That was people taking some of their stimulus check and paying down debt. And that is going to improve the balance sheets of households and firms, all right? It may not indicate at the very moment that people are running out to spend that, but I mean, that's just going to, longer term, when you look out and people's finances are getting healthier, I mean, that just sets up like a Goldilocks scenario when you look further out. So things are looking good. Anyway, don't forget, go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com. Sign up for a 30-day free trial of MMT Trader. Do it now. I may not have the 30-day free trial around much longer. Do it now. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.